All right. Okay, well, welcome everybody. The goals for our meeting today. So our meeting is going to focus on last week where we focused really heavily on the new competencies and the approval templates. Today we're going to primarily focus on the new EPP standards and the review standards. So our goal is that by the end of the meeting, participants will be familiar with Utah's EPP standards and begin gathering evidence that their program aligns with the standards. Then we have a second goal, and that is that participants will create an outline of how they will review and present evidence of the program standard alignment in the self-study report. And some of you may be like, what? And we'll get to all that. So, but our goal is by the end of the meeting that's where we'll be. So on our agenda today from 9 to 9:10, we'll do agency updates. From 9:10 to 9:20, we'll kind of review those competency approval templates again, see if there's any questions or any new questions. And then from 9:20 to 9:50, we'll talk about the new program review process and the EPP standards. And then we'll have Q&A. So the Apple Leadership Conference is just around the corner. So um, Tuesday, October 29th, Canyon School District. The conference is going to focus on a little bit on the new EPP standards, but it'll primarily focus on the new general teacher and elementary content competencies. And if you want to view a schedule, you can click on the Apple Conference website link. And if you have not registered yet, but plan to attend, maybe I'll drop this one in the chat as well. Then please complete this registration. Okay, the funding deadline is coming up as well. So all LEA specific requests and assignments need to be in Cactus by Tuesday, October 1st. And then all other assignments and licenses need to be posted by Sunday, October 13th. And then next, Lisa is going to talk a little bit about the annual report and the foundations of reading.
This is a friendly reminder that the annual report is due on October 15th. I think we've got maybe like half of our programs that have submitted it already, so good job to you. Just a reminder that this report is just the enrollment information, so we just need a list of candidates that were enrolled between September 1st and October 31st of September 1st, 2023 to August 31st, 2024. We did get some questions after we talked about it last time there because we had our meeting before August 31st, and they're like, how could people submit their reports already when the enrollment timeline hasn't been completed yet? And that's a great question. We kind of take that the September 1st to August 31st is the Title II definition of reporting, and we go along with that just to make things easier for our programs. However, like some of our universities, they start earlier than August, and your schools usually start earlier than August. If it makes sense to you to track it from like mid-August to mid-August, that's okay as well, as long as you're consistent from year to year. What we don't want to see is candidates getting, reported twice or not get reported at all because, we keep switching the deadline. So that's kind of why I think we got some of those reports early. They realized that they're not going to have any changes between mid-August to the end of September. So if you want to report it that way, that's fine. They're kind of more like guidelines rather than hard rules. Any questions on that? Oh, so Gwen is saying new enrollees or every enrollee. So we want to hear every enrollee. So if they were considered enrolled in your program during the 23-24 school year, we would like to know. And then if they completed the program during the 23 or 24 school year, then you just mark them with a yes, they completed. Like, for example, if you had somebody who enrolled, say, August 30th of 2024, You could report them on this last year's enrollment, or you could report them next year if you would like. It doesn't really matter as long as they get reported somewhere. Any other questions on that? Okay, and then this is something we also talked about last time. We've had like one or two programs that have submitted some recommendations the last 2 weeks, and their candidates have not passed the foundations of reading. So we just wanted um, to reiterate that starting September 1st, any candidate who is recommended for a professional license needs to have a passing score on the foundations of reading of at least 240 or higher. Or if they don't have a score of 240 or higher, have completed one of the alternate Euphoria assessment options. And I'm going to put a link to that in the chat. That they essentially are completing the flex option if they scored between 231 and 239, or if they complete micro-credentials. Andrew, would you be able to link, yeah, go back and just show that? So if they don't pass, they could either, do some studying, do some relearning, and then retake the foundations of reading. If they scored between 231 or 239, they can do one of the flex options, which are cheaper and a little bit less invasive as doing a 4-hour test. They basically just kind of redo one of those writing prompts where they submit evidence of planning a lesson or providing support to their students in science of reading, or they can do the micro-credential pathways. And if they do the micro-credential pathways, they do have to do all 3 micro-credentials in that pathway, and they have to pass it. Any questions on the foundations of reading? Oh, this is for elementary, early childhood, and special ed. If you have somebody who's enrolled in the APPEL special ed program, they will also need to pass the foundations of reading.
I just wanted to clarify, they have to do the foundations of reading test and not meet the 240 score before they can do the flex options. They can't just say, I want to do the flex options, right? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. And we do still have vouchers available. Right now, we're just doing requests by email. So if you want to email me a request that this candidate needs a voucher, we'll email them a voucher code. If we start getting a lot more requests, we may go a different route that's a little bit easier to keep track of. But for now, we're just doing emails. And that voucher is valid for their first attempt. They do not get a voucher for their second attempt or any attempt after. Yes, Piper.
Good morning. Quick question on that. I believe last time it was discussed, you thought that those would be available until April. Any update on that? As I talked to candidates, and of course they'd prefer to have a voucher. Do we anticipate how long that will be available?
Not at this moment. So it depends on the legislature. So the grant funding that's paying for those is expiring in 2025. So it'll be good all through this year. We have made a request and the board has supported it that they continue that grant funding. So we'll know for sure at the end of the session whether that grant was approved.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Great.
All right. Next we are going to talk about the competency approval templates and kind of how that process works and some of the resources that we have. So I know last month during our meeting, there was some confusion on everybody, including our end, about accessing the competency approval folders that we've shared with each of you. So we have the link here. and we believe that we've cleared that up. So anybody who we had shared them with should now have access to only your folder. So you're welcome to check that again if you haven't been there in the last month with that link. So just a reminder, the templates for the general teacher competencies and the elementary content competencies are due in those folders completed by June 1st, 2025, along with any additional documentation. So whenever you do put that in there, you can just email me, notify me, and then we will begin reviewing it. Yes, Jason.
Yes, just a quick question. Since the Reese's, each of us is that individual, but because we did apply as the 4 Reese's together, is it one folder that we would turn in together, or are you expecting an individual from each of the Reese's?
We would probably expect an individual, but we can, if you guys all just submit the same thing, we can just grade it, and we can review it like one time. And then
Because
and
our
then
application was all 4 of us together, and we do have standardized forms across all 4 Reese's. So
Lisa, what do you think about that?
If you want to submit one and everybody's cool with what's on there, that's fine. It saves us some time.
Yes, we can put that in the chat. Gwen, 1 second. Here you go. Okay, so those are due no later than June 1st, 2025. So after you've submitted the template, we will respond. So we'll review it and respond to you. It's possible changes will need to be made. It's possible no changes will need to be made. Either way, we'll provide that feedback within 2 weeks of when you have notified us that it's been submitted. And then also just a reminder, hopefully, this does not end up being an issue at all. But the final approval for your programs must be received by August 1st, 2025. If you have not received approval by August 1st, 2025, then you will no longer be able to enroll candidates starting September 1st, 2025.
Andrew, Cindy Phillips, may I ask a quick
Yes,
question?
you may, Cindy.
In the past, I have used something that has been produced as a template by the USPE just because I found that simple and straightforward. Will that be allowed?
Cindy, are you referring to the PLP template?
That and also just all the documents that the USPE has provided. I've just used those so that I could guide the program exactly the way it would collaborate with all the steps that you have.
Yep. So you will be able to do that. You'll still need to complete the template and indicate, which USPE approved options that we provided to you that you plan to have your candidates complete, if that makes sense.
It does.
But yes, there is definitely an option where like we provided all these resources and you can choose to just use those. And some of it may be like the university coursework, but we'll tell you, what they align to and things like that. So that you don't have to do much guessing on your end.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So we have a resource folder. Maybe if someone doesn't mind putting that link in the chat. And the resource folder is in the same public facing EPP competency approval folder that we just put in the chat, where you can go in and you click on APPEL and then you find your program. So there's also a folder called resources. And in that folder, we have copies of email communications that oftentimes have like links to resources that we send out. We have the tutorial videos on how to create the template, and then other resources that USB has created, and we've been adding to this list since that original email back in July. And then right now we're working on updating the Apple Director's Handbook and the PLP templates, which I'm hoping to present on at the Apple conference next month. We've made a lot of progress and we're almost done. So I'm hoping to be able to present those new templates next month, which I think you guys that choose to use them will find very helpful. And then we'll also work on creating a crosswalk of the old and new competencies along with the old and new micro credentials, just so that you can see how things are connected.
So Andrew, this is Susan.
Hey, Susan.
So if we use the PPL that we've been using in the past, is there a new one coming out from USBE or can we continue to use that one?
So you can use that template for candidates up until August 31st, 2025. Any new candidates after then, you would need to have an updated template. So either something that you create, which you're more than welcome to do, or you're welcome to copy part of ours or use all of ours. That's up to you. But that template, that new one that we're hoping is done in a month, is the one that you could start using for candidates in 2025 after September 1st. So right now we are working with SUU, SLIC, and UVU to get the new Apple courses aligned. So all three of those will be presenting at the leadership conference next month. They'll be presenting together at the same time. So hopefully during that presentation, you'll be able to see how they are aligning their coursework. Like I know UVU right now is planning to offer 3 courses that align to the general teacher competencies. SLIC is planning to offer 5, but they may not all be 3 credits. Some of them may be smaller than 3 credits. And so anyway, I think that'll be really helpful for people to see. And that'll be the only presentation that happens during that time so that everybody can attend to that. And then we're also working with the content specialist at USBE to create those new elementary content micro-credentials and the new general teacher competency micro-credentials. So elementary math and literacy have already been created, and candidates can complete those right now. The rest we're hoping to have live in Midas no later than January 2025. And we created this new, let me open this one, this new micro-credential list. So this is a list of all of the micro-credentials that a candidate could complete that count toward an endorsement or content or general teacher competencies. So as new micro-credentials are created, we'll just add them to this list as soon as that's done. So you can always check that list.
I know last month we had a comment that said it would be great if this public folder and all the resources could be linked in the Apple Directors folder, which I think is a great idea. So we will work on getting that done. And hopefully the permissions don't change when we do that.
So additional supports that we plan to offer coming up. The leadership conference will primarily focus on the new teacher competencies. And then we also plan to schedule additional workshops for programs between November and April that would talk about the competencies and the new EPP standards. And then we'll also continue to provide updates in the monthly Apple Director meetings. And then I know we've had several programs do this already, and you're more than welcome to schedule Zoom meetings with us. And we can walk you through things and kind of tell you how other programs are doing it. I know that's been really helpful. I hope for the programs that have scheduled them with us, but it's been really helpful for us as well. We've gotten some great questions and some great inspiration during some of those meetings. So, okay. So next, we'd kind of like to turn it over to you guys. We're just wondering, what additional questions do you have? Is there anything you'd like specifically during the workshops to have presented or to see? We have the same link from the last meeting that you're welcome to put comments in. Or you're welcome to just ask questions or give us feedback and come off mute. So I'll mute myself now and you guys are welcome to.
Andrew, this is Jesslyn. So does the math micro-credentials also cover the demonstration pieces that are required for the new approval template?
Great question, Jesslyn. Every micro credential we make will cover all application, basic content knowledge, and demonstration competencies.
Thank you so much. That's helpful.
Yeah, so generally speaking, a candidate who, let's say they completed a program and they're like, I really know all of this, they could micro credential their way through the whole program. With the exception, they have to take the Foundations of Reading exam. They don't have to pass it, but if not, then they can do the micro credentials, and which is still micro credentialing your way through the program. So yes, that is an option for every competency that we have. Any other questions?
Andrew, could I just confirm something that I think has been said, not in this meeting,
Yeah.
but in previous either conversations or meetings? I know that the ELA and math have been placed in available for the micro credentials in Midas. Did you say that would also be true of the social studies and the science for elementary teachers?
Yes, Cindy, if I'm understanding the question correctly, so we will have fine arts, PE, health, science, social studies, elementary micro credentials. They're not finished yet, which is why they're not live yet.
Okay, and I did understand that, but maybe I'm asking the wrong question because I'm ignorant of what's available, but I have not seen. I know that right now you have the literacy methods and the math methods that are required for elementary teachers, and those can be done as micro credentials or a course, UVU and SUU and so on. But my question is, will those methods courses for science and social studies be available as micro credentials for people who feel like they have the knowledge?
Yeah, yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions?
I will say that is part of the conversations we're having with our EPP, with our higher ed partners, is they're creating coursework for the general teaching competencies as well as the elementary content. And some of them we're working to do secondary content, which is not a change, but to add more options, because one of the feedback we got is that we need more secondary content. So we're working on all that.
All right. All right, next I will turn it over to Lisa.
Okay, we are going to switch gears just a little bit. We understand that all these changes with the new competencies can be really overwhelming, and if you've hit your limit and you feel like you can't take any more change, I understand. And if you want to, because we are recording this, so if you want to come back and watch this another time, that's great. The reason, and I debated on putting this off because I realize a lot of change at once is not necessarily helpful. But the reason why we're talking about this now is because the way the program review is changing, it's going to be focusing on that continuous improvement piece. And so a lot of what you're doing as part of your aligning to the new competencies will be part of this new review process. And so we're kind of beginning with the end in mind, and just getting our feet wet. Like, we're just taking baby steps. There's I don't know if you've seen that. Is it What About Bob show, I think is with, anyway, he's like taking baby steps. And I was going to put that in here and I forgot. But so if you can bear with me for another half hour, I think it'll be really helpful. Or if you can't, come back and watch this in the next couple weeks, because we'd like you to keep this in mind as you're going through this process, so that when we do your program review in the next year or two, it'll be a lot easier. So let's start with what the purpose of program review is. And I wanted to be totally upfront and clear about what the purpose of program review is. From board rule perspective, what about Bob? Yes, thank you, Susan. That in Board Rule 277-303-4, it says the superintendent shall establish uniform procedures for initial approval and review of educator preparation programs to ensure compliance with this rule. Now, 303 is also where the EPP standards are. And so when we adopted those EPP standards, essentially what we're saying is that our program review is going to ensure that programs are aligned to those standards. And that is a big part of why we do program review, is compliance, which is necessary. However, I think another essential part of program review is to engage in continuous improvement practices and to strengthen programs. And that's why we've adopted this self-study type process, is to help our programs engage in that continuous improvement practice. And so part of that is to kind of ask this question: what is program quality? How do you know if a program is effective or quote unquote high quality? And I'd love you to just drop your thoughts in the chat. Is, how do you know that your educator prep program or any program is effective or high quality? Or you could just shout it out if you want. My teachers exceed standards. Candidates who feel complete the program feel well prepared to teach. Consistent within Utah. Have a high finishing rate.
Malia, I'm driving, so I'm just going to add it verbally. The teachers stay engaged.
Mm-hmm.
The candidates stay engaged and
Excellent.
make measure.
Yes, I love the focus on the candidates. Obviously, a high quality program is going to produce high quality candidates. Program produces teachers. Oh, whoops, now we're getting them in there. Got to go back. Produces teachers who are effective, measured by state results such as Rise or Acadians. Candidates are prepared for a career in education, not short-term work. Reflective about their practice and improve afterwards. Participants leave feeling like they've learned and gained more than when they started, and can now be successful. They're able to complete the program while teaching and know that they are making what they're doing is making them a better teacher. Teachers are confident in their skills and become high quality teachers. The pathway is clear for the candidate. They feel successful and complete the program ready and prepared. So brings them up, make sure understanding exceeds the perception of hoops to jump through, and they have a deeper understanding of the value of the program. I really love all of those thoughts. You can tell that you guys have been, teachers feel supported, stay in the classroom, and are prepared and prepare students. Excellent. I think those are all great ideas. And that's part of what we're going to be talking more about here in the next 20 to 30 minutes. Can you go to the next slide? So the new process, just kind of as to give you an idea, we're doing a pilot phase this year. So programs that is by volunteer only. So if you don't want to have to worry about this for a whole year, you're more than welcome to. Starting next school year, we'll start our first rounds. You're going to be voluntold, and usually we'll start with programs that did their review first. So if your program was reviewed in like 21, 22, you will most likely be up for review in 25, 26 if you don't volunteer this year. So, but we'll just take volunteers this year to participate in our pilot process. So you can decide when you want to participate, whether it'll be this year or next year or possibly the year after, depending on when your program was reviewed last time. Yes, Piper, we can talk about that at the end. Okay, so the new review process, just kind of a quick overview, is that programs will internally conduct a self-study, write a report on their findings, and share the self-study report with USP staff at least 1 month before their scheduled program review or site visit. So the idea is that we'll still do what we're calling a site visit. So we'll come to your program either virtually or in person and meet with you with your teams to discuss your program strengths and needs, and also to review some candidate files. What's new in this process is what we're calling the self-study report. So the idea is that you are going to do a self-study on how your program aligns to the APP standards. Now, we realize the standards are new, and you may have evidence that shows that you align, or you may not. And some of it's okay if you don't have evidence, as long as you have a plan of how you're going to collect evidence. And the idea behind the self-study is that we're creating a culture where the program is gauging in that continuous improvement practice. So you know what evidence you're reviewing on a regular basis, and you're reviewing that evidence on a regular basis, and then making adjustments to your program based on that evidence to help strengthen your practices. So we realize this is new. It's similar to an accreditation type visit. So if you've participated in accreditation, some of this might be familiar or it might not. So we realize with most APPEL programs, this is probably going to be a new process. So that's why we're taking baby steps and doing a pilot first. So then during the program site visit, we'll discuss your self-study report and some of the evidence that you have. What did you find during that? And then we'll review some candidate files. And then we'll provide some feedback and also an outcome of that review visit. So any questions so far? Oh,
great one in the chat. Yeah.
So I think what Shonda's asking is, do you have to have the new competency plan in place for the new review process? So it will depend on when your program is reviewed. If you're volunteering this year, I would suggest that you look at the old competencies. So what are your candidates doing that shows that they've demonstrated the old competencies, since technically nobody's really adopted the new competencies yet? You don't really have any data that shows how that is working. If you're going to be reviewed in 2 to 3 years, then you might have transitioned into the new competencies by then. So it just depends on when your review is. Hopefully that answers your question, Shonda.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So here's the link to the EPP standards. I know that we've looked at these a couple of times, but it may have been a while. So I'm just going to drop this in the chat. What is going to drive our reviews moving forward? It's going to be all about these standards. And then the big question is, what evidence do we have or can we collect that shows how our programs align with the Utah APP standards? What does the evidence tell us about our program quality or effectiveness? And then one thing we are asking as part of your self-study is that you identify one goal. After you reviewed all your evidence and you're saying, oh, we're doing really great here, but we're not doing so great in this area. So maybe we'll set a goal that we can make some improvements in this area for the next 3 to 4 years between now and when our next review process is. So that will be a required piece of the self-study, is that you've selected one goal. And then we will follow up on that goal every year in your annual report to see how things are going. Okay, next one. So just a review of the standards. We basically have 3 standards, but there are little subsections underneath each standard. And those are required. I had a professor once who would give us a test and he'd say, there's only 3 questions, but then there were like 6 questions underneath each question. There's like a part 1A, 1B. So it's like, there's not 3 questions, there's actually 20 questions. So I get it. If you're going the long route, there's actually 9 standards, but they are grouped within 3 ideas. And the first one is all about program completer competency. So a lot of the things that you guys talked about when you talked about program quality is basically the quality of the candidates. And that's what standard 1 gets at, is the guiding question at the end of the program. Oh, wait. Yeah. At the end of the program, can completers effectively demonstrate the educator preparation competencies for the license area they are seeking? Some of the questions we get with this is that what are the educator preparation competencies? And I think that was part of what Shonda was asking, is which competencies are we going to be addressing? For now, I think we're going to be addressing the old competencies. But if your program is reviewed in the next, 2 to 3 years, maybe you'll transition to the new competencies. But generally for teacher preparation, we're looking for competencies in general teacher preparation, and then also their content area. If you're doing the old competencies, we still have those clinical competencies. If you're doing the new competencies, the clinical competencies are wrapped up into the general teacher preparation competencies. So when we say competencies, we do mean both the general teaching and the content. So we would be looking for evidence for all of those competencies. And then what evidence does my program have that candidates have effectively demonstrated these competencies? And I think a lot of this is going to come down as you're filling out your template for approval to the new competencies. You're going to say, well, my candidates are going to take a class and they're going to be evaluated as part of their clinical experiences, or perhaps they're going to take a PPAT, or perhaps they're going to complete these micro-credentials. And so that's the evidence that you're going to have that they've demonstrated those competencies. So the question is, are you monitoring? Like, do you know how many candidates pass those classes? Do you know how effective those classes are? That kind of feedback. And then as you gather that, you may look at that and say, oh, look, our candidates are like 100% passing this class. That's great. And the feedback we get from the instructor is that the candidates are doing well. The candidates may have sent some feedback about the class. So that are you analyzing that data and possibly making adjustments based on that data? Let's go to the next slide. So evidence includes measures of program completer competency and content, pedagogical, and professional knowledge relevant to the license area sought. We are specifically looking for these 3 things. So can they effectively demonstrate the educator preparation competencies established in rule? Do they have the experience, knowledge, and skills needed to serve all students with a variety of educational needs? So the idea here is that they can serve students with a variety of needs. So anything that you've got that shows that they've had a chance to practice or learn about student needs, possibly, differentiating instruction or that kind of thing, will help meet that standard. And then, do completers establish goals for their own professional growth and engage in self-assessment, goal setting, and reflection? And this is one where we recognize has not been a standard practice. I think most programs are really good at this first part where they, can you establish those competencies? But we haven't encouraged our candidates to do self-assessment or goal setting. And so that might be an area where you'll say, we need to do a little bit better at that. And this is our plan for how we're going to encourage our candidates to engage in self-assessment. And that's what you would put in your self-study report. Say, well, in our classes, we're going to incorporate these opportunities to self-reflect on their assignments. We're in our clinical experiences, we're going to have them do some reflection pieces and track their own learning, something like that. And then we'll analyze that data and see how it's working. So here's some examples of evidence that could be used under standard 1. And I am going to give credit where credit is due. We've already met with Joylyn Lincoln at the Utah UAPCS, and a lot of this I stole directly from her. So we've also stolen some from some of our university partners who have done this as part of their accreditation visit. So some examples, but this is not a comprehensive list. If you can totally come up with something new, or you can do something different, and that is going to be fine. And then let's go to standard 2. Standard 2 is systems of support. So now we're focusing on what does your program do to support candidates in meeting those competencies. So what kinds of systems of support are needed to support candidates, and what kind of supports do candidates needs? That might be some of the questions you have as part of your program. Like, what is a system? It's looking at, well, we meet with candidates regularly. We've got all of, mentors. We've got, so that's part of what we're looking at. Is the standard is what supports do your candidates get, and how do you know that it's working? And so let's go to the next slide. There's actually 4 standards on this one areas that we're looking at. So in every high quality program, they need to have learning experiences, and those are usually courses or, feedback loops that you have as part of their clinicals. But that's why we kind of expanded the broad, definition of learning experience could be more than just taking a class. Especially as we start getting into hands-on learning, on-the-job learning, that those could also be interpreted as learning experiences. So they have multiple opportunities to demonstrate that they have the knowledge and skills needed to serve all students. So they seek out and support high-quality clinical experiences for candidates, where candidates have opportunities to practice and receive feedback on their knowledge and skills. I think most candidates in APPEL programs are getting lots of opportunities to practice because they're already teachers of record. But do they receive feedback on their knowledge and skills? That might be a question for your program. How do they know that what they're doing is working? How do they get support for that and feedback on the things that they're trying in the classroom? And then, do programs develop and support high quality mentors who support program candidates in demonstrating competencies? And as we've looked at the board rule, there is a clear definition of mentors. So the standard expectation here is that every candidate has been assigned a mentor. That mentor has a professional license and has received training on mentoring. Now, that training is not mandated, so it could be any kind of training. But what we're going to be looking for on this standard is every candidate been assigned? Is that a mentor? Has that mentor have a professional license? And has that mentor received some kind of training? So as you're looking at evidence that shows that, hopefully your evidence shows that every candidate has a mentor, the mentor has a professional license, and the mentor has received training. So Shonda asked, how does providing high quality learning experiences met when completing a micro-credential only? If they can complete the entire APPEL program doing micros, is that high quality learning experiences? Great question. I would say, how do you know the candidate already has the knowledge and skills? Because micro-credentials are designed for candidates who already have the knowledge and skills. And how do they know that the micro-credential exists? So part of, I would say, the system is providing that opportunity for them and knowing that that opportunity is a good one for that candidate. So I'm assuming that before they take the micro-credential, there would have been a conversation with the candidate that says, the candidate's like, well, I've already got the knowledge and skills. I'd like to just do the micro-credential. There's like, okay, great. So here's the micro-credential. Here's the link to it. This is what you're going to be doing for the micro-credential. Do you feel comfortable doing that? Do you need any support in doing that micro-credential? That kind of thing. And then following up with them to see that they did it.
Lisa, thanks. I realize the question is kind of snarky, but it's also legitimate at the same time, because I don't know if that's happening across the state. That those conversations, maybe that's the whole point of this program review, is to make those conversations happen. But when I hear things come from USBE, like, hey, there's all these micro credentials, they can complete them here, I get really worried that the translation becomes, oh, we'll just push this onto the educator, and then those experiences are not happening at the appropriate level, at the appropriate rigor. And then it remains a checklist compliance system instead of a high quality educator preparation. So thanks for answering it, and know that it comes from a place of, I want all of our teachers in any APPEL program to have high quality learning experiences.
Yeah, I totally understand, Shauna, and I think that's a great point. That it's important to have these options because we do have candidates that do have the knowledge and skills, and it makes sense for them to just go ahead and demonstrate those, rather than, go and take courses and learn how to do it. But I would say that those are few and far between. They're not going to be the majority of your candidates. The majority of our candidates are going to need support. They're going to need to learn those knowledge and skills. And that's part of what teacher preparation is. Jason.
So I would say that the micro-credentials are starting to become more and more used across the state with programs as they become more available from what I've seen and the conversations I've had with my teachers. One of the things that I have seen, though, is with the advent of AI, I've started to see a lot of teachers developing a lot of AI responses to things that I've had to have discussions with them about the proper use of AI, those types of things. But not everybody has the same opinion about the use of AI as I do, and I realize that, and I respect that. But I have seen some teachers completely do lesson plan, everything to turn in like a single day for several sections of micro credentials that I've had conversations with them about.
Yes, and that we have also seen that in some of our micro-credential submissions. And I will just state that's been part of our conversation as we've developed them, is there may be a point where an AI response is appropriate. And that's usually where, like, what is the definition of blah, blah, blah? What are some examples of blah, blah, blah? And that's the basic knowledge and application competencies that perhaps an AI could do. But when we get to our demonstration competencies, the point is that we want to see the candidate demonstrating it in a classroom with students. And that's part of what we ask for in those micro-credentials, is that we need to see evidence of demonstration. So we either need to see a video of them teaching, we need to see an evaluation rubric of somebody going in and evaluating them teaching, or we need to see student work samples of that they did as part of the result of that lesson. Those are not as yet hard to fake with AI. I guess it's possible. AI learns all the time, but that is kind of what we're looking for, is those things that are more hands-on, on the job type evidences that AI can't necessarily fulfill. But it is a constant concern that we're looking at. Joylyn says if she sees AI usage, I usually remove competency options from their plan. That's a good suggestion. And then Kelly says, who is grading the competencies? I think it depends on what evidence they're using to demonstrate that. If they're doing micro-credentials, usually it's whoever we've hired to evaluate that micro-credential. If it's they're taking a course, it's probably the course instructor that's grading it. If they're doing an evaluation, then somebody's going and hopefully has training on how to evaluate those competencies. So it just depends on what evidence we're talking about that's being evaluated for those competencies. Oh, micro-credentials. So we have partnered with some people like Brittany Foster. Is it Brittany Foster or is it Brittany Bauer?
Brittany Foster.
Okay, so Brittany Foster has been evaluating some of our micro-credentials. We have reached out to a couple of other people who have been interested. They're mostly APPEL directors or people in the districts who have experience with that have been doing that, or we ourselves will grade them if we need to. My candidates that really want the micro-credential are usually my candidates that are looking at the price tag. They can't afford to pay $300 per university class, although that is a great price. However, once they get into it, they realize the university course is less hassle and more supportive. The overwhelming feedback I've gotten from micro-credentials is that they are a lot of hassle and they'd rather take the university course. I prefer that they take the university course and get the guidance and feedback from a professor. Yeah, and that's generally the feedback we've gotten as well. Especially if they really don't have the knowledge and skills, the micro-credential can seem really overwhelming because they don't understand what they need to do to demonstrate that competency. So how do Apple directors have time in their life to grade micros? I can't even imagine that. It's a good question. I don't know either, but we're glad that they do. Travis, not all of us have lives, Shonda. Okay. All right. And then this is, so I think we've talked about mentors, and we also talked about programs prioritize capacity to support candidates as reflected in staffing. And we've talked a little bit about that. How do they have time to do all that? But I think part of that is recognizing what you can and can't do, and then understanding that maybe, you know, we need to tweak some things, or maybe we need to hire somebody, or maybe we need to make this more automated. I think that's just part of the process. And I would say on this standard, particularly this first round of reviews, I think this could be, we're not looking for a standard answer here, I guess is what we're saying. This is more of a self-reflection piece of, do you feel like your programs have the capacity to support candidates? I know some programs have set limits on themselves that says we've only got so many mentors, so we can only accept so many candidates. Maybe our program's really small, and so because we only have the director, we're only going to accept like 5 people, you know, so that's a conversation you have internally. Okay, then the last standard, I'm gonna need to go a little bit faster. Oh, so examples of evidence on standard 2. We'll come back to this in just a minute. Standard 3 is continuous improvement and impact. And I would say a large part of this is probably going to be your self-study report. So what kind of a continuous improvement does your program personnel participate in? And then we did add, what are some examples of partnerships that you seek with stakeholders? This is just an idea that we don't prepare educators in isolation, that we are part of a larger education network. And we do, it's important that we participate in that network where we can. This again is another one of those internal questions, I believe, that we don't have a standard answer for. So let's go to the next slide. And that's just a program seek partnerships with stakeholders to strengthen the Utah education system. And then they engage in thoughtful continuous improvement practices. And then some examples of evidence for this could be goals and action plans, meeting minutes, implementation records, attending monthly directors meetings, Apple Leadership Conference, and your self-study report. Okay, so really quickly, we're going to go into breakout groups here. And I'm just going to randomly assign you a standard, realizing that not all standards are created equal, but I'd like to get your ideas on this. So if you're in group 1, you're going to be looking at standard 1 and just providing some ideas. You can have a discussion with your group, or if you just want to drop your idea in the document, and I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat, that we'd like to get some brainstorming ideas here of what your program may or may have that shows that they're already meeting these competencies. And it's okay if you like came up with an idea just now and it's like, oh, you know what, it'd be really cool if we developed a survey or something, or if we did some focus groups. That's fine. You can come up with a plan. If it's something you're not currently doing, but you'd like to, feel free to drop that in the chat or on the document. And then we'll give you about 5 minutes. Yeah, we'll do maybe 4 minutes to talk about that. And then we'll bring you back. And then hopefully we'll have time to do a second round, but maybe not. Okay, so breakout rooms.
Yeah, Travis. Yep.
So if you guys have already thought about this, great. But one of the ways that universities really help improve their accreditation, and high schools and all of them, is having, you have someone participate on someone else's approval team. And so that might be, I'm not sure that's ready for your pilot, but at some point building that in where Apple directors can go and participate in those groups, maybe not even as a decision making, but as a learning experience for them as part of that team, I think would be very valuable. That's just all I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think we have that as part of our plan, don't we, Lisa?
Yes, it is something we've talked about. We haven't
Awesome.
quite worked out the details yet, but it is something we'd like to do if everybody's on board with that. So
Awesome. Thanks,
keep that in the
guys.
back of your head when we get
I
there.
will. I'll see you next month. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Thanks.
See you, Travis.
Coming back from our breakout rooms, and I am going to try and share my screen. Was able to kind of jump in a few breakout rooms, and I wanted to start with standard 3, the group 3 room. They jumped on AI really quick and used AI to develop some ideas, which I think is great. So when this is standard 3 is does the program engage in continuous improvement and strengthen the Utah education system? And it looks like they came up with some ideas of panel and Q&A for students getting their AEL. What do you wish you knew? What do you done differently? What are you glad you knew? Exit surveys when candidates finished. We have had talks with our university partners of creating a common exit survey that we could administer statewide. So that might be something we could do, or you're welcome to do one that's just your program. So providing a launching spot of ideas of what data is available and what's needed. And that's kind of what the purpose of today was. And I get the feeling that we might need some more of these, is to generate some more ideas. Surveys throughout the programs. We've got more exit surveys, meeting with candidates to see why they stay, talk about their experience and reasons for staying and moving. So great ideas there. And then I heard a lot of great discussion with standard 1 group, I think it was. And standard 2, but it doesn't look like they got anything written down yet. So does anybody in that group want to share some of the ideas that were shared in that group? I don't want to put you on the spot, so, but if you do, looks like standard 2 is starting to get some things down here. I did hear some really great discussions. So what this tells me, I think, is that we need more of this. We need more opportunities to collaborate. We do have our APPEL Leadership Conference coming up next month that we are going to be doing some of this. And the session that I'm doing about how to prepare for your program review, we'll probably do more of this. And then there was also some feedback on the aligning to the new competencies. We've got some sessions on that you would like opportunities to collaborate on that as well. So we will definitely take that feedback back and hopefully get those sessions to where they're going to be very helpful for you. So we'll continue this. This is not finished, but hopefully this is at least starting that process. We're taking that first baby step. And so if we go back to our learning outcome here, I would say that we are familiar with the Utah APP standards and begin gathering evidence of program and lesson standards. I don't know if we quite got to that outline. We just kind of ran out of time. So that's what we'll focus on in the next couple meetings so that we've got some good evidence here of how our programs are aligning. Okay, so let's go to one of the questions we did have here is, as we were going through this as our group, it was, do they really have to have like 12, 20 pieces of evidence? And generally speaking, it could be as simple as like 5. One piece of evidence could meet multiple standards. And it really just depends on how, what evidence you're collecting. How does that evidence align to the standard? We're not really looking for a huge amount of evidence when, one piece could meet multiple standards. That's all you need is one. So as we're getting through this and we're fine tuning it, as we're getting better at recognizing what does meet the standards and what doesn't meet the standards, we're hoping that it can be really simple and that we don't have to, do multiple tons and tons of evidence to show that possibly one piece of evidence could meet multiple standards. So we'll get to that point, but I don't think we're quite there yet. So any questions, comments?
Lisa, I would just have to say thank you for the preview and like helping us start to get our minds wrapped around all of this. Like it's a lot. And I think that we just need lots of opportunity to see and explore and discuss because I'm still drowning, but I think that we'll get there. So thank you.
Okay, no problem. And keep that feedback coming because we want to do what works best for you. So let us know how we can help. Okay, then I think we are done for the day. And our next meeting will be in November. I believe it's November 21st, which is the third Thursday because the fourth Thursday is Thanksgiving. But hopefully we'll see you all at the Apple Leadership Conference, which is on October 29th. And we're really excited for that. So we'll stick around for some individual questions if you've got them. But thank you for coming, and we hope you have a great day.